it's crazy, but it's
You're watching Channel Z, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel, broadcasting live from Studio Z.
Makes me act the way I do.
This is Undead Live with a special Sunday late morning edition, reporting from the front lines of the zombie apocalypse. We have your back morning, noon, and night, whether you're dead, undead, recently deceased, or fully alive. Today is Sunday, October 18th. I'm Athena Actipus.
And I'm Dave Lundberg-Kenrick.
Now, first, let's bring on our front lines correspondents, Larry and Steve. I cannot wait to see how they're doing. I just need to know that they're okay.
I mean, we haven't heard from them. So
what do you mean we haven't heard from them? We
haven't heard a word from them.
But so you have a video probably, right? You have a video from Larry or Steve?
Nothing. Also, you don't look so good.
Like, I don't look. I feel great. I feel awesome.
You have blood just running down both sides of your face.
I don't think it's that big of a deal, really, because I feel great. I feel so good, Dave. I have never felt better, honestly.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. I've never felt better. Yeah. I mean, I did have like a couple of blackouts and stuff the last couple of days, but that
doesn't sound good at all. Yeah, no, that's unusual. That's really unusual. So you sure you're feeling all right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little more hungry than normal, I guess, but sometimes that happens. And I've been finding these bones around the house.
What do you mean bones? Like whose bones? What bones?
I'm not really sure, but this is what.
Oh, Athena. Okay. That's not normal. It's nowhere close to normal. So,
but I feel great, Dave. So you really have nothing to worry about. I mean, literally, I have never felt better. I feel great. And I feel so social. I just want to hang out with everybody. And I feel so good.
If you don't hang out with people, I don't think you should be hanging out with anybody right now. I think if your family's there, you should ask them to leave, but you should not. Yeah. I don't think you should be hanging out.
Okay. Well, at least I can hang out with you online, hang out with everybody online for now. Maybe later I'll go be social.
Let's start with just sticking with Zoom. So I worry about, So,
Yeah. Well, maybe we should just get on with our show then. I think, even though the apocalypse is going on all around us, I feel great. And, I think there's a way that we can all still feel great, even with the apocalypse happening. Because I prove that you can feel great even when the apocalypse is happening.
Oh, I'm glad you feel so. I'm kind of glad. I'm also kind of worried that you feel this great. But yeah, let's bring on our first correspondent.
Having Peter on is going to make me feel great.
Yes. So Peter is one of the world's leading Earth scientists. He's the VP of the Global Futures Lab at ASU. So Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So what do you see, Peter, as the biggest apocalyptic challenges that the world is facing in the coming decades?
Well, I don't see just one. I think we actually are heading towards several of them. And the reason for that is that since quite a while, I would say definitely since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we are putting pressure on all parts of the Earth system, including the societal systems, that puts us towards what several people, or what the community actually calls planetary boundaries. And that means that we are actually exhausting the resources of the planet. We are asking the planet to give more than it has to give. And it shows in the fact that we are overheating the planet. We are heading towards water shortages. The food security is not guaranteed. And that, of course, then gets to public health and the future of people on the planet. Looking at that, of course, that we see all the signs around us. I mean, even in the Phoenix area in California, we have the wildfires, we have heat records, we have hurricanes on the East Coast. We see that more frequently in more forms and more places. So you would say, well, that is so hopeless. Let's just go from being deniers to fatalists. That actually would be a bad trajectory that clearly would not lead to any positive outcome. So fortunately, there are also ways that we know that will take pressure off the planet and will lower the chances to hit some of these endpoints where we poke through the buffer of the Earth system. And that
Peter,
is really what the Global Futures Lab is all about.
yeah, I want to jump in because you pointed out like this, transition from, being a denier to being a fatalist, almost with nothing in between. And I think that's how a lot of people feel when they look at, well, what is happening in the world? It's like, okay, ignore. Let's pretend that none of these problems are going on until the evidence is just so, it mounts so highly that you just cannot ignore it. But then you had this long history of denying it. So you haven't built in any mechanisms for being able to deal with it. So then the response ends up being fatalism at that point. So Peter, what are you doing in the Global Futures Lab that kind of helps find this space, that allows us to not just go from being deniers to being fatalists?
So in essence, what we are looking for is the space of hope, and actually hope grounded in discovery, in solutions that we feel can be implemented and can make a difference. So what we are really looking for are interventions to some of the issues. For example, to keep the planet cool meaning below 1.5 degrees Celsius, about 3 Fahrenheit of warming. We have developed technology that would take some of the greenhouse gases back out of the atmosphere. So we know in principle how to do that. What we have to still find in the space of hope is how to make people accept that and apply these methods that in principle we have and that we know how to apply and scale up. So there are several measures along the lines of what I just said about climate that we know how we could alleviate some of these pressures. For me, the biggest issue is to convince people to make different choices than the choices they made that got us into this, pressure situation.
And what kind of ways are there to create that opportunity for behavior change? What motivates people to change what they're doing, for these very large scale impacts that they might not be able to see with their own eyes or maybe even feel within their lifetimes?
There are several ways. There is the way of communicating in a way that uses more narratives, more storytelling, that addresses different audience with different stories that resonate with them. There is, of course, the outside pressure on them that they feel more and more, and we know that discomfort and pain is a good motivator to change. But importantly, there is the youth, and the youth, as we see in Fridays for Future and other youth movements, actually has understood by now, or does fully understand, that we are narrowing their option space for the future. And they are telling us in no uncertain terms that they don't think that this is right, that we should stop, putting the same kind of pressure onto the planet that takes their choices for the future away. And so that is an important force. And on the inside, in terms of our education programs within the Global Futures Lab, there is the College of Global Futures, where we have 3 schools where we try to train students so that they do understand what kind of a fragile system the Earth system is, how little it takes to get it out of shape and off the rails, and what we can do to understand that, and then to actually apply measures that bring it back onto a trajectory that can lead into a future in which there are opportunities to thrive, rather than just muddy our way through, or even worse, hit an apocalypse that might lead to very undesirable outcomes with a lot of loss.
Yeah. So, Peter, you were with us for the first zombie apocalypse medicine meeting that we had in person 2 years ago. And I'm wondering, did you get any use out of the zombie apocalypse survival kit that you got at that first meeting?
Well, it gave me a lot of it induced a lot of thought, and led to some reflections that I otherwise probably would not have had. So having been part of that meeting was clearly not just very interesting, but also got me into domains of thinking that I otherwise probably would not have entered into.
And Peter, in terms of narratives, so you brought up, the importance of narratives for the future, and it seems like there are two kinds of narratives often for the future. Like there's a narrative of envisioning a positive future, right, and kind of going into that together, which sometimes is a great way to kind of bring people together around envisioning how things could be different and better. And then there's also sort of the apocalyptic narratives, talking about fictional apocalypses, whether they involve monsters or not, or if they involve the very real threat of zombies. And so my question for you is, when do we want positive narratives? And when do we want narratives that are maybe a little bit scary, but still fun enough for us to kind of use them as a way of engaging together about the real dangers that we're facing?
In my view, they have to go along with each other, because we have to make people understand that we are not just talking hypothetically or in an abstract sense about issues that we are facing. But at the same time, we cannot do it sequentially, because until we would get to the positive narratives, they might be turned off and they might be on the fatalistic side. So we have to mix the two and say, we are in the Anthropocene, and what the Anthropocene really is, it is sending warning signs to us that we have to change our ways, that we have to make different choices. But at the same time, it also has to assure people that there are things that we know how to do that would bring us onto a better trajectory, and that these different choices are not necessarily, and in the most cases they are actually not, related to sacrifice. Because a lot of people think we are creatures of habit. If you make a change in your choices, you sacrifice something. I would contend that if we are not making different choices now and we wait a little bit longer, then the absolute sacrifice will face us without us having an influence on how that plays out. So coming back to your question, I think we have to mix these narratives to make sure that people do understand that it's a serious situation, but at the same time that they are seeing the hope, that they are seeing the possibilities, that they are seeing their own role in changing the trajectory we are on.
That makes a lot of sense, right? So we want to kind of face the reality, the apocalyptic reality that we're in, and sometimes these narratives can be a way for us to do that with fun. But at some point you have to say, okay, well, what happens, after the apocalypse? How are we going to rebuild society? And how can that actually be, fun and engaging and leverage some of the, good things that we know about human resilience to challenging circumstances. Peter, one last question for you. In your role as the Vice President of Global Futures Lab at ASU, and really, being at the forefront of kind of this sea change in how education is being done at the undergraduate level in terms of, focusing on, what are the problems that we're facing in society, and how can education be sort of more structured so that it helps students get the tools to solve them. What are your feelings about this next generation of students and these changes in education? Is this going to help to save us from a bad demise in the apocalypse? What are your thoughts about future generations?
I think, I was always a believer that a lot of change in academia is actually coming from students. They are often ahead in their thinking of your typical scholar, faculty member, researcher. And so if we are willing to give them the space to develop their own thoughts within, certain perimeters, they will actually take that up very easily. And what we have to do is we have to make sure that we put up programs that are more broadly based, that are systems oriented, that are solutions oriented, use inspired, rather than staying in what often happens in academia in relatively narrowly defined spaces. Some people call it silos. Let their minds go free. We have to set their minds free so that they can think beyond what we typically have in curricula in our traditional disciplines.
Well, Peter, that's such a great message to end on. Also, I mean, it's a call for kind of de-zombifying our educational system, right? Creating a space where students can think for themselves and come up with ideas that maybe, those of us who are already, instructors in the educational system couldn't come up with given what we know of the world.
That's right.
Any final thoughts for us, Peter?
Final thoughts. We are actually, we are out of time. That's the fine, and that's for me the ultimate message. We have to act now. We do know in many cases how to act, and it's really up to us to make the choice to take the solutions that are in front of us, embark on them, throw away some of the fear that change might be sacrifice, and embrace that the future still holds many opportunities for us.
Thank you, Peter. That was the uplifting message that I needed this morning. Really a pleasure to have you here with us on Undead Live. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. So today we're taking a look at the question, why do people believe in monsters? Joining us now, we have Jim Perry, host of one of the world's leading podcasts on the paranormal, Euphemet. Jim, welcome to Undead Live. Can you tell us a little bit about Euphemet?
Yeah, well, I mean, first I just want to say, Athena, like I'm actually like pretty concerned for you as well. I mean, I think that
Jim, I'm
you're
feeling
looking
so good.
I mean, there's blood happening. I mean, I don't think I'm not a doctor, right? But like I think even I can see something is kind of going astray there. I don't know.
I feel fine, guys. Really, you don't need to worry about me.
Okay.
I'm with Jim. I feel like bleeding eyes, that's not even like one of those things where you really need a doctor to say that's not normal.
No, it's
you guys,
bad.
if I feel good, like what could possibly be wrong with me? Seriously, let's just have Jim talk about his podcast. I want to hear about Jim's podcast. Stop talking about how I look, please. Thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll check in if Yeah, so Euphemet is a documentary podcast series about the unknown and our relationship to it. I am boots on the ground in haunted locations, in alleged mystical locations, places where people have interacted with UFOs or communicated allegedly with Sasquatches. I've dined with people who identify themselves as vampires, as shapeshifters. Really, at the end of the day, Euphemet is a documentary podcast that uses the paranormal to tell very human stories. At the end of the day, these are humans experiencing something so out of this realm that it really is a great metaphor a lot of times for human transformation. The paranormal is, and it's very reflective. And so, my belief in why sometimes people believe they see monsters is that it could perhaps be a reflective phenomenon.
Fascinating.
So what do you mean by reflective phenomenon? Like it's reflecting, what is it reflecting exactly?
Yeah, so I think monsters can sometimes be an analog for our own personal greatest fears, our desires, our inspirations, right? Our goals. Sometimes the monsters that we see can really be reflective of these intents and ideas. They can be a manifestation of our greatest inner workings placed out in front of us. A small example, and in terms of how we can be inspired by these myths and how they reflect, is that, years ago, before the apocalypse happened, I was involved as an owner and illustrator for the first commercially available zombie shooting target. And so my job was to think really hard and concept and illustrate what these characters would be. And then we'd send them out to firing ranges all over the world, and people would practice eventually for something that would become reality right now, right? The zombie apocalypse. So, a part of that that was revealing to me was that I'm now seeing what I was creating in my head come to life, these things incarnate. And because of that, I feel almost a little partly responsible, and I'm feeling a lot of guilt towards that. And maybe it's because I haven't ate much lately. I'm right now on my last MRE. It's beef stew, and I don't want to eat it again. That's for sure. But I think in that way, we can learn from what we believe in monsters.
So Jim, are you saying that you feel somehow personally responsible for the zombie apocalypse?
I do. I feel that like my show and others are responsible for us manifesting this monstrosity into our world, perhaps. And that our tales of accepting the strange and adopting these mythologies have somehow imbued themselves into what our reality really is.
I think this guilt is, we're finding it very common. A lot of people are feeling really guilty about their role in bringing about this zombie apocalypse.
But Jim, I have to say, I don't think that, you in talking about these stories brought them forth. I mean, a lot of times I think people like you have a sense of, well, what are the things that are about to happen on the horizon, and just because you bring those to light doesn't mean that you bring them about. That's just my personal perspective.
I appreciate that, but I would suggest that, listen, I think some people see monsters, or some people believe they see monsters because they actually do. And when that information is translated and given to a mass amount of people, right? Belief doesn't require evidence all the time. Belief doesn't require scientific proof. Sometimes it requires a faith. And stories, myth, legend, these things that we translate are just that. They can become a belief system sometimes, and in that way, they infect, like zombies, individuals that then perhaps, based on what's going on now, can manifest into real life.
So you said you've met with people who identify as different types of monsters and vampires, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think, what leads somebody to sort of come to the idea or to the realization, or however you want to describe it, of, oh, I am not a human, I'm something else? Have you seen any sort of sense of that when you were talking to these?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's a, human beings are such that we find solace and we find acceptance within the ability to create our own narrative and to create safe spaces for us to sort of live and thrive and to find connection in. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of these individuals who, sort of attribute supernatural powers to being a fundamental element of their personality, or sort of identify as a vampire or some other creature seemingly out of fiction. At the end of the day, these individuals are finding themselves within a broader community. One of the things that was startling within my work, or maybe not startling but revealing, was that these individuals, these humans, right, are not out there maliciously really sucking people's bloods, but what they are doing is they're finding commonality in groups of individuals that are similar. And so the vampire that I went and visited with, which was a really charming man who is a community activist and a leader in supporting, feeding the homeless and things of that nature within his own vampire house.
What does he feed them, by the way? Just curious.
You would think that there there would be something to that. I mean, just regular food, chicken dinners, things of that nature. He actually is based in New Orleans and was foundational in setting up food lines for those affected by Katrina at the time. So it does harken back to that old trope of like, sort of vampires feed on people. Well, in this case, this vampire is feeding others, right? So that was really interesting sort of angle to that story, which I really appreciated. But the thing is, in getting back to this, he's not alone, right?
Jim,
And
I
these
just have
individuals
to ask, like, does he drink human blood? Like, is that
Yes.
why he considers himself a vampire? How does that work? I just have to know, like, how does someone
Wait,
in
this
this?
guy, he actually drinks human
Yeah,
blood?
I want to know
yeah.
about this.
Yeah. So this is great that we're going down this angle. Yeah, so they drink human blood. They have community donors that exist, and these donors for the vampires will submit to contracts. And these contracts are more similar to what you would find maybe within like the bondage or S&M community, where they're, sort of contracts about what the physical limitations are based on the relationship. And, the actual physical activity of consumption, the method of that varies across the board depending on what community or vampire you are.
Like,
This
what are
individual in
what are some of the
particular,
options? Yeah. Okay. Great.
yeah, is just mouth to flesh. Is this individual a slight, sort of opening will be placed into the donor skin, and yeah, he'll suck it up to something like a liter maybe sometimes. So
No way.
yeah, you're not,
Wow.
we're not talking about a little amount either. And so, others will use, sort of phlebotomy techniques, and there's other methods, right? But, it's pretty consistent that the mouth on the skin to the donor at a regular basis to help these vampires feel like they're imbuing themselves with a life energy or a life force based off this blood is very common.
So can I ask a question about the sort of relationship between the vampire and the donor? Is it like exclusively like, hey, I show up and donate my blood and leave the way I would donate my blood to like a medical thing, or do they have like more of a sort of interpersonal relationship?
Yeah, I think both. I think sometimes, listen, there's vampires living in every community in the world. And it's sort of a little bit of a secret community still, which is obvious. But these are normal folks. And so the routine situation of the donor coming over or you going and you doing the transaction and see you later, see you next week or whatever, completely possible, because that could be an attorney in any city in the world, perhaps a very professional man that just wants to get the transaction done. Then there are other deeper bonds that are more like sort of spiritual connections that, sort of also engage with a lot of ritualistic behavior. For the individual that I profiled, none of that really exists. He doesn't really believe that it's a religion. He doesn't adhere to any sort of religion, but he does, sort of have a relationship that's built with his donors that each member of that transaction is receiving something out of it. Those that are donating are receiving something out of it. And listen, some parts of the community are like sort of overtly sexual as well. There is like sort of a sexual component to it.
I want to bring in this comment here from Emily Zarka. She's pointing out that consent is always a theme in vampire narratives, right? I mean, this idea like you need to be invited in, and that this is, both in real and fictional narratives. Do you see this consent issue as sort of front and center in the vampire community?
I think with any community, there's going to be discourse, right? And that is the same for the vampiric community. There are sort of renegade groups that do exist where maybe consent is not as considered as some of the other more reputable organizations that exist. There are those communities that live within the shadows ill, and any reputable vampiric community leader would probably tell you the same. So yeah, consent is a huge issue within that community like any other organization across the world right now. I think that the same struggles that Hollywood or your local bank is encountering with tackling and confronting these issues of consent and demeanor is within that community as well.
Now, Jim, you mentioned that a lot of these communities are still in the shadows. Is there anything that's technically illegal about what's going on, or it's just sort of socially frowned upon, and that's why they're in the shadows?
Yeah, I think some organizations could perhaps be in the shadows because there is other illegal activity going on, perhaps, around the experience of being a vampire. I would not like to allege what those could be, but listen, you can be you can create those things within your head based upon the popular mythos that's there. In terms of the actual blood transfer, I suppose every state would be different. Perhaps we are getting to some territory where it probably is illegal in some states for this sort of consensual behavior to even take place. That being said, I think mostly, these contracts are a big part of how individuals will, sort of protect themselves in legal terms.
Jim, that's fascinating. And I have to say, I was going to ask you and follow up, why do you think people believe in monsters? But, when people have experience actually dining with, vampires that feast on human blood, I guess, there is an element of reality there that is undeniable.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you question a lot of things. It makes you wonder to yourself, well, if this is true, what else could be true? And that's why I get back to this this phenomenon of monsters. Perhaps being more widespread than what we acknowledge on a daily basis.
Dave, did you want to jump in?
So I'm having some trouble in my mind getting my head around the idea of this being a thing people could consent to, is it, and whether or not it's always a completely consensual level of consent, or if it sort of belies troubling power dynamics. But I don't really know what my question would be about that.
You're right to consider that.
Yeah. And I would just say, Jim, I mean, it sounds like there is a documentary film that needs to be made about these communities, maybe when the apocalypse calms down enough that it's possible to do that. Because I would definitely watch that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, cheap plug, you can listen to a feature documentary on Euphomet podcast about that very individual and his vampiric community. And you're right, a featured documentary film does need to be made by this. So
tell us a little bit more about how people can find you and your podcast if they want to learn more.
Most definitely. You can just go to euphomet.com. That's EUPHOMET, and subscribe, rate, and review on anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Can I ask what the title means?
Yeah, I made it up. It's sort of a euphemism on a euphemistic Baphomet, a playful devil.
Okay, sure.
As the phenomenon, is seemingly.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so check out euphomet.com. And Jim, thank you so much for sharing your brains with us. We're going to put you backstage in the studio, so hopefully you can pop back in our conversation later on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And our next guest studies the functions behind fear and morbid curiosity. And you might remember him from our live updates the last few days. Coltan Scrivner, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, Coltan,
it's good to see you.
Before we start kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of why people are so intrigued by monsters and the undead, we want to hear, how are you and Matthias doing? Last time we saw you, it seemed like things had maybe calmed down a little bit.
A little bit. So Matthias, I think, is at home resting. But we're both doing good. So we had a good night of apocalypse training, lots of data collection. The monsters who sort of made a surprise appearance towards the end of our report are nice and contained now. So I think the situation is under better control than it was the first night, certainly, and even better than the second night.
Well, that's such a relief. I know that the zombie apocalypse is kind of going down differently in different regions, geographic regions here within the U.S. and also globally. And I'm just really pleased to hear that things are seemingly under control there.
Yeah, you're looking a little bit like some of our training actors, Athena. Have you been helping out with some of the apocalypse training? Or
I feel great, Colton. Don't worry about me. I'm better than ever. Better than ever. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, can I ask Colton what your sort of take is on what we just heard from Jim about these sort of vampires and how that plays in with sort of what you're studying on fear response and
Yeah. So I think the way that what it made me think about, I mean, obviously I was like glued to the screen listening to him talk about people who actually drink blood in real life and actually believe they're vampires. I think that what probably everyone watching wants to know is, how can I identify these people, right? How do I know if it's my lawyer that's the vampire?
I don't think you need anybody to, guide you about that. It's pretty clear.
Well, maybe it sounds like they maybe could lead pretty normal lives on the outside, and then they have their vampiric tendencies at night. But I think with my work, it goes along with this idea that people are really interested in sort of the motives of people that they think are dangerous. So true crime, for example, is a good popular sort of iteration of this. And I think that if you were to make a documentary about the people that really think they're vampires and drink blood, that would probably be a really, really popular documentary.
Yeah, and I'd like to see also the people who show up to be donors, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So
we have a question here from Neil Smith. So you were mentioning the apocalypse training. Are you using this apocalypse training as a data collection opportunity?
That's right. So we are, in addition to training people to get ready for the apocalypse, we're sort of collecting data on it so that we can learn how we can improve the training and what people are getting out of the training. So are they just kind of, having fun with it, or are they actually learning something about themselves? Are they feeling like they're sort of more prepared for, to face the zombie apocalypse? So yeah, we're using this as an opportunity to gather data and learn about how people do train for the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. So yesterday when we saw you and Matthias in the tent, outside of the tent, and then inside the tent, told us a little bit about the process that you're kind of going through to collect data, and you have the cameras set up. So Colton, maybe you could tell us, what have you found so far? What are you hoping to find? And what can this research that you're doing in the midst of the apocalypse, how can that help us understand why we're so curious about monsters, the undead, and dangerous things in general?
Sure. So we're doing a couple of different things with the data collection. So when you saw us this past weekend, we were doing a study on the different kinds of people that come to haunts and what they get out of it. And so if you come to an apocalypse training, what are you getting out of it? And what does that say about maybe your personality? And so, people who came last night, they sort of identified in one of three ways as horror fans. So as I mentioned, they were, adrenaline junkies. So these are the people that are getting like a big mood boost out of sort of the thrill of the training. And then there are people who are white knucklers, which comes from the literal sort of white knuckling when you're clenching your fists. And these people are obviously really afraid of what's going on, but they obviously are getting something out of it, right? It's not the adrenaline rush that they're really after. So we were curious, why would someone who is really afraid of something like a horror movie watch it? Or why is someone who's really afraid of apocalyptic training come and train for the apocalypse? And then there's this third group that we've identified, and we don't have a good name for them yet. We sort of have been calling them dark copers, mostly because it sounds cool, but these people seem to be sort of a mix of the adrenaline junkies and the white knucklers. So they do like the thrill a little bit, but not as much as, say, an adrenaline junkie. And they're not quite as afraid as a white knuckler. They're sort of willing to brave what's going on. And these people seem to get not just the mood boost like the adrenaline junkies, but they also seem to be saying that they learn something from the experience. So they learn something about themselves, or they feel like they've developed as a person, or now they're more confident in their ability to conquer fears in the real world, since they've just conquered their fears inside the training.
Fascinating. So, Coltan, when it comes to this question, why do people believe in monsters? And why are they so interested? It seems like part of what you're showing is that there can be this sort of advantage in dealing with challenging situations. What is the evidence that people are actually in a better position to deal with challenges, depending on their attitudes towards monsters and their interest in monsters?
Yeah, good question. Matthias and I ran a study in the before times, looking at how people who watch different kinds of movies dealt with the COVID pandemic. And, it could be something else about their personality, but we did find that people who were horror fans were dealing with the pandemic much better than people who were fans of any other genre. And specifically, it was specific kinds of horror films where we really saw huge differences. So people who were really into zombie films, in a zombie film, there's a lot going on, in the apocalypse that's very similar to what happened during a regular pandemic. There's kind of a breakdown of social structure. You're not really sure how much you can trust the person next to you. You're not really sure if they're infected. And so I think there are a lot of similarities that are that happen between, say, a zombie apocalypse in the real world, or a pandemic in the real world, and a zombie apocalypse or a pandemic in a movie. So that sort of, in addition to this finding that people who are afraid of scary things still do it, and then they report that the reason they do it, or at least one outcome from it, is that they are learning something about themselves. So now they're feeling, more confident in their ability to handle something that they perceive as scary in the future. So a lot of people would say that, before they go in, if they're a white knuckler, they would say that they're not really sure if they can do this, or really afraid of it. They think they're going to have to drop the training and drop out. But then when they succeed, it kind of gives them a confidence boost that maybe they're overestimating how threatening something is, or underestimating their ability to deal with something that's frightening.
So it sounds like there's almost a level of kind of people developing emotional regulation skills in the context of these challenging events as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're hoping to kind of look at too, is, are people actually, they say they're learning something, and they say that they're, maybe now more confident in their ability to deal with scary things, but, what are they actually more confident? We want to know if our training actually works, right? Not just if they think it works. And so, yeah, it could be that people are sort of learning, when you feel afraid, it puts you on alert, and you might act in sort of a very reactive way, as opposed to a reflective way. And so it could be the case that, if you train a lot with these kinds of films, or these sort of apocalyptic trainings, that you learn how to feel afraid, but how to sort of calmly reflect on that feeling, and try to understand what the best course of action be.
Coltan, is there any worry with these training programs that that your trainees might get so desensitized to zombies and other threats that it would actually lead them to be at greater risk for harm?
Yeah, you might think that that's an issue. I don't know. I actually think it would be the opposite, right? If you train a lot, the idea is that you're learning sort of the edges of your boundaries, like how close should I get to the zombie? How close can I get to the zombie before it becomes an issue, right? So if you go through training, it's not a big deal. If if you're playing a video game, for example, you can just restart at the previous level if you die, right? And so you can kind of make bad mistakes. You can make poor mistakes in the training, or in like a video game, and learn kind of where the edges are. Like how far can I push the envelope before it's too far? And so I actually think that, maybe they're becoming a bit desensitized, but I think more than that, they're sort of learning the limits of what they can or should do.
Thanks. And this question from Gwyneth Gordon, she says it seems like true crime fans are often women, that they're more women than men. And do you have any idea why?
Yeah. I think one thing that maybe happens is, in true crime. So if you lump, which I would probably put true crime in sort of the horror genre broadly. If you put true crime in the horror genre, it's really it's lower undiscussed than a lot of horror films. There's not really, it's not really discussed is not a main element of true crime. And if you look at a lot of psych studies, you'll see that at least in the West, women are much higher on discuss sensitivity, and so it could be the case that there's maybe not quite as much avoidance going on with regard to disgust, and maybe that allows women to feel a bit more comfortable approaching that kind of hypothetical scenario.
Thanks, Colton. One last thing. Christopher Patton is asking Jake here. Yeah, are you collecting the recordings of your screams? I think if you are, he probably would like you to get in touch with him over email.
Yeah. So we have video cameras set up throughout the training program, and so we're catching not just their screams, but also their facial expressions, their body postures, and so we're also trying to learn who's brave, like who goes in the front. If you're walking down a narrow hallway and you hear a creepy noise, who takes post in the front, right? And you might think it's maybe like the biggest guy or something, but that's not really what we're finding. It's not always the biggest, baddest looking person who's in the front. But yes, we are collecting their screams as well.
Are you going to be looking at the acoustic characteristics of them?
I don't think we had planned to, but that could be really interesting.
All right. Well, hopefully that you guys will be able to make a connection then, because as we saw earlier, Jake Patton has some mad skills when it comes to doing acoustic analysis.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Colton, thank you so much for sharing your brains. We're going to put you backstage in the studio here. And next up, we are really excited to have our correspondent, Chelsey Weber-Smith, back. We know America has a history of sometimes hysterical responses to perceived threats, monsters included. And Chelsey Weber-Smith is the host of the American Hysteria podcast. And she's here with us today to tell us where does this fear of real life monsters come from? Why, especially, here in America specifically, where does this fear come from? And is it helpful or is it harmful?
I think the Illuminati's blocking your audio, Chelsey. So if there's...
They always do that. Okay.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So I think when we're talking about monsters and really any type of human experience, you kind of have to go back to our human nature. And I think monsters are really nothing but our fear of the wilderness of nature and our fear of predators coming into a modern context. Because right now we don't have to fear snakes and wolves and saber-toothed cats and crocodiles and all of the different things, and lions and all the things that we are hardwired to be afraid of. And so instead of being afraid of those things, we create monsters, and we can create harmless monsters like Bigfoot, which I used to work with Jim on Euphomet. That was my first podcast experience. So we hung out with, a man who really believed in Bigfoot, and that was like a huge emotional thing for him. It was, he was a misty-eyed a lot of times talking about his experiences with Bigfoot. So I think that you can take a monster and you can almost make him fuzzy and warm, and you can create that sense of belonging, kind of like Jim was talking about with the vampires. However, when I did an episode on for American Hysteria on monsters, I was really coming into it being like, oh, we're going to talk about regional monsters, chupacabra, Bigfoot, aliens, whatever. But then I started to realize that what was important to talk about in this way was how we use the language of the monstrous to other the people in our society who are already oppressed. And so I think that that's a really important thing. And we can go back. I think a really interesting place to go back to is during Nat Turner's slave revolt. And this was in the mid 1800s, 1831, actually. And it was the same year that Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was reprinted and it spread all over America. And so when Nat Turner orchestrated this extremely famous and vital slave revolt that was very bloody and violent and moved forward in things in a really big way, but this person became this huge monster. And he was gone for about 2 weeks on the run, and already there became a folklore about Nat Turner while he was on the run, and parents were already using him as a kind of boogeyman. And the language in the newspapers was so often comparing Nat Turner to Frankenstein, and the idea that the enslaved people who were taking these actions, who were meeting in secret, were doing so in monstrous ways. And that carries through all the way to like the 1980s war on drugs, and the idea of sort of the black man impervious to bullets, and all these stories that have been told forever. You can even go back to some really interesting and awful stories. I think one that these are very lost in time, right? I had to go into some deep academic research to find these things, but one of them is I always have a hard time pronouncing it, but it's Snolligloster. And this was a story told to enslaved people by those who were enslaving them, that in the swamp there was this monster, the Snolligloster. And what happened is when an enslaved person was to go into this swamp area, which was a place that was really often a hideout for those who were trying to escape enslavement. And the story was that this monster lived there with a giant horn coming out of his back. And if you went into the woods, he would get you, or it would get you, and it would basically impale you. And so it was also about like the cypress trees and how strange they look, but really it was a cautionary tale. Like we tell cautionary tales constantly, right? We tell moralistic stories that teach children sort of the boundaries of what's acceptable in culture. And so slave owners would dress up like this monster. Okay. So like they would come in during times they thought were meetings, which might be a religious gathering or probably an actual activist meeting. And one guy showed up with an entire mechanical suit that he made to make him look like this monster from the swamp. And it's pretty wild. And then you can even take it to, Appalachia, and you can take it to the idea of like the bloodthirsty inbred hillbilly, which is a story that we still see in horror movies, right? I mean, Wrong Turn, The Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the list really goes on with hillbilly horror, and of course Deliverance. And so I think you hear this language when you want to other people. There's a group of mixed race folks who lived in Appalachia who were called the Melungians, and there was all these stories told to children like the Melungians will get you if you don't go to bed, and really they were just afraid of this group who was racial mixing and separate sort of from mainstream white middle class and lower class culture. And that was at the time so scary. I mean, this idea that whiteness could be corrupted, and sort of the monstrous nature of that. And you still hear it in any way. You hear Trump using the language of the monstrous against Democrats. You hear QAnon using satanic cults, which is another huge thing that I could talk to you about for the rest of my life. But so you have this power to dehumanize, right? Because what is a monster except for the animalistic part of the self that we're so afraid of? I mean, we're so afraid of the wilderness that we've pushed it to like the very fringes of our existence. And I think the fear that nature can come back to both us and the world at large is a big part of why we're afraid of monsters, and sort of the usefulness of creating a villain out of your social other, so then you can act like you are the victim and then do what you want in retaliation. And so I think monsters, I love studying them, and I think that they're not always part of this, but the language and the idea of the monstrous continues to define all of our social relationships.
Chelsey, thank you. That was Really awesome. And we're going to put you backstage in the studio and bring our resident monster expert, Emily Zarka, on. I think this is great timing. Emily, now as our monsters correspondent, what do you think about why people believe in monsters and the sort of bigger picture that Chelsey has been giving us now also about the sort of, cultural and social context around sort of monstering others?
I think that there's a great distinction to be made here between a monster and the monstrous. So for me, a monster is any being whose perceived deviance results in some kind of myth or legend. So the story is integral to that. Whereas monstrous language, name calling, pointing your finger at certain types of people or things can be a little more loose. But I think that we believe in monsters because they're part of the human condition. There has never been a time or place in human history where we haven't constructed monsters. I think that's because they're essential to our understanding of ourselves, our world, and the morality of whatever time they're created in.
So what do you think makes them so appealing?
I think it depends on the type of monster. But again, I think that monsters are inherently us, that we are the ones creating them, right? It's the living, the speaking, the writing people who are coming up with the constructions and making these tropes and these patterns. And there's a level of control and also freedom. So for me, monsters are inherently about restriction and also freedom. It's this idea that they can challenge our boundaries while still allowing us to keep certain aspects of our lives the way we want them to, right? So monsters are boundary crossers. They're always between genders, between sexualities, between the living and the dead, which I think is one of the reasons why we're so fascinated by zombies and the undead in general. It's they retain classification as humanoid, not necessarily human. And I think that this boundary crossing that they do in particular is both living and dead more readily accepts transference of meaning. Also, zombies and walking corpses are inherent reminders of our morality. There's something about the fleshiness of the zombie that has a physical impact on those with whom it interacts. The corporeality is disgusting, but also appealing. And again, that depends on the type of monster. Ghosts don't have that same effect. But I think one of the reasons that we've always seen the undead in human history, perhaps more than any other monster, is because they are so close to us. I mean, right? We're a heartbeat or a parasite away from becoming them ourselves.
Right. So actually, I wonder, and it might be worth bringing Chelsey back on to talk about this as well, but I wonder how much when people sort of monsterize the others, are they aware that they're speaking metaphorically? Or do they, at what point do they stop thinking they're speaking metaphorically, I
think with the language and the myth becomes so ingrained into culture that it's accepted as a given fact rather than a legend or some kind of fiction. But maybe Chelsey has some insight onto that.
I don't think I have a ton of insight. I think you're so right, Emily, with the difference between our monsters, and I think that they inform each other just the way that horror movies say so much about our culture. But I think that these things are human nature. We're afraid of the other, and the other is just created socially. So we come into this world handed our others, right? We come into this world programmed by white supremacy, programmed by the patriarchy, whatever you want to say. We're programmed by the hierarchy in America. And so we're given this. And so we have this natural fear of the monster. We have also this horrible, I think natural, but maybe American or social, as I mentioned, a problem with turning those who we may be victimizing ourselves, say the colonists coming to America and calling indigenous people baby stealing, blood drinking, satanic agents, which is true. We have this, I think we just have almost a built-in or perhaps cultural ingrained thing that makes us categorize people as monsters, but I don't really think it's intentional. I think it's just this horrible inclination we have through our culture.
Yeah, I think that some monster theorists argue that all monsters are inherently about calling back to some primal need when we were more animalistic and without culture. That, you know, snakes, alligators can easily be translated into, or even werewolves, right, into things like wolves, predatory birds, actual real things that were trying to kill us. And I think that might be part of the equation, that we do have this biological necessity to preserve our own lives, and that with the lack of a real predator animal out there, we create these sort of, I guess, emotional or mental predators that challenge our livelihood in some way. So that, I think, is part of the equation. But I think I agree that there's something inherent in us as humans. And again, for me, monsters are all about stories and sharing knowledge through language. And I think that that's part of who we are as humans. I think we want to tell stories, and monsters are just a really excellent way of doing that.
I think that's great.
I'm going to channel Colton since he had to go because of the time difference. So, you know, if we kind of look at this sort of morbid curiosity perspective, right, one of the ideas is that you as an organism trying to keep yourself safe are seeking out information about things that might be dangerous. And by kind of experimenting with them, right, you can gain information that might help you survive. And you actually see, this is something that Barb Natterson talks about also, that young people and younger animals are more inclined to sort of try to get that experience with the dangerous, and that there's a lot of social learning that also happens where animals will watch other animals approach predators and see what happens. And I wonder if part of maybe what we as humans have done is we've kind of taken that like predator inspection idea and the social learning that can come from watching others inspect predators and kind of storified it so that you don't actually have to watch somebody approach a predator. Instead, you can tell the story about it and have the information kind of embedded within that story that allows individuals to learn about what the threats are in the world. But then, of course, once you have a system like that, that itself can get hijacked, right? So if somebody wants to say, hey, those, you know, that out group is dangerous, or those people over there, you know, we deserve to take what they have because they're horrible, right? You can then take the storytelling frame and co-opt it for those other ends.
So
yeah, absolutely. I think that, just to follow up on that, you're describing exactly what a philosopher from the Romantic period, Edmund Burke, would call the idea of delight, where we face danger and potential injury, but through a boundary, through some kind of demarcator that makes us actually not physically threatened. So this is one of the ways people have explained why people will gather to watch an execution, right? And I think that we find this in horror. At least this is how I approach horror personally. It's funny that you were saying that, you know, kids will watch someone approach and see how dangerous it is. I did that with horror movies. I became a much more conscientious person of my surroundings because of watching horror movies. And I think, again, because I was in that idea of the Burkean delight, where you can have the mental and emotional sort of training or run through, right, of these horrible situations, but you still are removed enough that you know you're not actually in danger. So you can toe the line just the same way that monsters are always towing the line of these boundaries that we're discussing.
So I have a question for all of you guys, and it's going to come off this comment from Carlo, where he's talking about, so there's a debate in Dungeons and Dragons community right now about whether having essentially evil orcs and other monsters is a vehicle for racism. And I think, as we've talked like the past few days, we've seen lots of ways where these monsters did start out sort of having these racial connotations and things like that. So where we are, given where we are now, right, as a society, how can we sort of move forward with these different stories that have these sort of all these different backgrounds and use them? I guess basically, how can we go forward to still maybe use these for good, or somehow, you know what I mean? Oh,
I do. I mean, my personal opinion is I think that a lot of the monsters that we know about today, and this is something in my own work, right, is we're primarily looking at what I call white monsters. Monsters that were created by white people in positions of power, usually white men, who were the ones pointing the finger at certain types of people. That's genders, sexualities, races, religions, socioeconomic class, etc. So what I think where we can continue to keep learning from horror, because I do think there's always going to be a place for it. And for me, horror is education, is we need to be allowing people who were in those marginalized communities when some of these stories were first created to be telling their own stories. We need to be placing more value on queer folks, of people of color, of Black creators of horror, because ultimately horror is about our own experiences with the world. And maybe it's overly optimistic of me, but I think that if we allowed more people to share their stories through monsters, that we could only improve from that as a culture and as humans.
I want to bring Jim back into the conversation too. Jim, what are your thoughts given how this conversation has been playing out?
I mean, sometimes I think it's possible that, we're the monster.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're the monster, and we're using these things to sort out something that's happening within our personal life, within our relationships. There's such good foils for our own misunderstanding about what the unknown can be. The unknown, right? What is that? That is a question sometimes that's bigger than anything else that could be affecting us at any other time. So that's a huge fear. That's the biggest fear. That's meeting our own mortality, right? And we need some sort of framing device. We've always need some sort of narrative tool to be able to inform us about what is happening with ourselves. And sometimes that's making ourselves the other. That's sometimes making ourselves the monster. And so in those cases, I think it's really important that we hold on to this idea of monsters being a framing device for the own transformations that occur in our lives, our own metamorphoses, our own zombification. But where I do have challenges is when it is used as a framing device against other, right? And I think that ties together a little bit what Emily and Chelsey are both saying, is that, you can go in a lot of different directions in terms of using monster as a weapon or as a device to understand more.
Absolutely. Back to, if it's okay to go back to Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure.
I think I don't have a ton to say about, I've never played it, so I don't have a ton to say about its inherent racism, but obviously interrogating everything all the time is great. Doesn't mean you have to get rid of it, but it's good to understand it, right? So the other thing about Dungeons and Dragons, just to tie things in a little bit, is how back in the 80s it was believed that Dungeons and Dragons was satanic, and that you could throw it in the fire and there would be all these screams, and that it was hypnotizing kids into doing satanic rituals and cults, and it was like this master guide to the occult. And I think we are seeing that come back hardcore, because of course in the 80s the satanic panic was horrific in the 80s, and caused people to go to prison because they were suspected to be in satanic cults and to be eating children and doing all of this crazy stuff. And that's kind of coming back in our language of the monstrous right now, right? With it's literally, Donald Trump will not say that Democrats in Hollywood are not in a pedophile satanic cult that sacrifices children. Like, he will not say that that's not true. So now we've got these monsters, which is, Satan is kind of our ultimate monster in a way, and calling something satanic is so much the language of the monstrous. And we're just seeing it permeating our culture again and actually swaying people toward the right, because it's so sensational to imagine a satanic baby eating cult. There's not really anything worse. There's not really anything more monstrous. And that's a story we've been telling since the days of early Christianity, are cults of people eating children that are, under the spell of Satan or whatever. So I think it's the monstrous is coming back again into our highest levels of our politics. And we have people who are getting elected believing in this story of the monstrous, Illuminati deep state cult that's controlling everything in the name of Satan and destroying the I'm very bad at that word, nuclear family. And, so it's coming back, and it's really terrible.
Chelsey, thanks. I think, this is really a perspective that is resonating for, those of us who did grow up in the 80s. Like I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and I remember the Satanic Panic. I remember being in high school and, having friends who said they were Satanists. And I was like, what do you mean? And then they're like, no, listen. And I was like, okay. But it was such a big thing. And we have our film correspondent here, actually, Jason David Scott, who was just commenting about how that was part of his experience as well. Dr. Scott, welcome, and would love to hear your thoughts and perspective.
Just very briefly, growing up in the 1980s in Southern California, very progressive, part of Southern California, but I went to a very religious school. And they taught me all about Jesus and Christianity and forgiveness. But every day for a couple of years, it was playing Led Zeppelin albums backwards, holding up album covers. They literally burned books and album covers. And it was at that point my parents said, maybe you don't belong in that school. But it was a very real thing. And it had a profound impact on me because I felt like my fellow fourth graders didn't care. And I was the only one who was paying attention to this great spiritual warfare. I'm really fascinated by the discussion of, we keep talking about the stories that we tell. And I think I want to remind people of is the way we've told stories has shifted. And I think what we're seeing in so many of these conversations is, what do we do now? How can we reactivate our ability to tell stories in order to learn, in order to survive, in order to find and build new communities? And what I've noticed is that for the last 100 years, we've had stories mediated and told at us. And that's not where stories came from. Stories came out of embodied traditions of people sitting around. So someone telling you that story of the beast or the monster was acting out the part of the monster and scaring you. They weren't just sort of passively doing it in the Mary Shelley 3 or 4 narrators deep voice, right? So movies and written text and comic books even, they're all things that tell the stories at us. Where are the stories that are being told with us? And we're seeing them in things like these interactive experiences that people create, the thing that the Coltan's apocalypse training, what Chelsey was talking about with the people in the 1900s coming into the churches with, monstrous apparitions. We need to experience that. It's not just enough anymore that we can have people tell us the stories and we can recognize ourselves in them. That, I think, is turned us into kind of story zombies, where all we do is take the information in. But when we have those experiences that allow us to interact, to embody, and to tell the story, giant immersive experiences, then we're learning something different. Then the fear in our body is real for those white knucklers in Coltan's experiment, or for the people who are reluctant to go through that haunted house at Halloween. Those are much more primal and learning opportunities for learning than are things now, like just reading what somebody wrote about what was monstrous 200 years ago. As fascinating and as scary as that might be.
That's a really great point, Dr. Scott. And I want to ask you, what do you think the space is for us to tell our own stories and create these stories that might, help us kind of deal with the challenges that we're in today? And what can be done to expand the opportunities for sort of telling those stories and having those more immersive experiences that allow us to engage on a deeper level?
Well, one gift that we have from the last 100, 200 years of mediated narratives is we have a knowledge base. We have worlds that we know and that we would like to live in, right? We don't have to invent a whole new zombie apocalypse. We have the one we're living with. And we have we have the Romero verse, so we have the Walking Dead verse, right? We have places where there are rules and characters and expectations and things that are already familiar to us. So is it in the spaces of gaming? Is it in the spaces of immersive experiences? Is it in the in the after time when we'll be able to come together and enact these things together in a deeply immersive way, when we'll all be able to drop ourselves in the middle of a cornfield and find our way out and live with that fear, rather than, just having another new mythology sort of dished out to us. So I think in looking at new technologies, I remember Diana 5 a couple days ago warning us against, falling in love with these virtual universes. But I believe that if we can construct those virtual universes to start to enhance and bring more dimension and more physical experience to the worlds that we already know and are familiar with, then we'll re-engage with those worlds. And I think we'll re-engage with our own sense of, 1, we can survive, 2, we can solve problems together, and 3, we actually can confront that quote unquote real world in a way that we've earned. We haven't, the story isn't just a distraction from the real world. It's an essential part for us understanding how the real world operates.
Now, Dr. Scott, I think a lot of people in today's world feel kind of disempowered about creating stories and also, actively participating in them, partially because of, what you noted as like we've kind of become zombified as just receivers, passive receivers of stories. Are there ways that we can become more empowered about creating and participating in these stories?
This has already started to happen, and the younger you are, the more you are in tune to this happening. Or the more you're around young people. Once upon a time when I went to film school, nobody touched a film camera until they got to film school. It's like starting a music school and never having anybody touch an instrument until they're 20 years old. We live in a world now where people are growing up with this technology. It's more and more democratized. Right now, it's democratized to the point where a young person can create their own zombie film or can create their own fictional universe. They can't create the fully immersive one yet, the 3D one, the interactive one. That takes more money, that takes more resources, that takes more collaboration. But the native digital storytelling abilities are already leaps and bounds by what we might have expected them to be just 20, 30 years ago, thanks to rapidly improving technology. So I'm confident that even though I, as an older person, do not have the answer and do not know which of those technologies will emerge, I feel very lucky to be in a place where I can see that the next generation is already in the frontier and working that way.
And Dr. Scott, one last question for you. You are actually at the forefront of helping to create some of these immersive experiences. Can you tell us a little bit about, what is going on in terms of technological, interactive, immersive innovation, even as the zombie apocalypse is going on around us?
Even as this has gone on, and I should say that I'm more the mythology expert rather than the technical expert in this area, at least in my wing of the world. But at the New American Film School at ASU, we are part of a new project that's going up in downtown Mesa, Arizona, which is actually funded by the city of Mesa to the tune of almost $70 million. It's a huge new facility that's going to be not only house our regular old film program where we make movies and TV shows the way that we've been doing for the last 100 years, but also as a center for technological and digital storytelling innovation, where we're going to have a huge 3,000 square foot immersive studio. We're going to be developing new master's programs in gaming, immersive experiences, and immersive entertainment. These also involve things like extending film and media experiences to the sciences, to community building, to digital mapping of cultures and where people live, and understanding how using technology to represent how things have changed over time in an immersive sense. So you could go into a room or use your phone or your VR headset to experience history in a new way. So that's going to open up in the fall of 2022, which might just about be in the time for us to revisit this whole zombie apocalypse medicine conference as well. In an exciting way. Yeah,
it is great timing. So we'll look forward to sort of seeing what the next 2 years bring in terms of these technological and storytelling developments. I'd love to open this up just a little bit to thoughts about, how can we leverage storytelling now for helping to envision the future that we want, or just dealing with the reality that we're in, and how do those interplay? Chelsey, you're nodding. Do you want to take this one?
I think for me, if we're putting it in a political context, understanding why people believe these things is really integral to me, and the work that we do. You know, like I went into a men's rights thing where I really tried to understand, okay, like how does a person become like an incel men's rights guy? And so, which is of course, I'd say like kind of a liberal monster, right? At the idea of the incel. And so I really went into that community and explored it, and it really helped me understand why we're making people into monsters, because for them it's feminists, right? It's we can turn anybody and give them these monstrous traits, and I think it's so vital. You don't have to do it, but to be open to understanding the path that people go through to make our social monsters, which are different than our monsters of legend, but they do share. I mean, what is the elite satanic cult but a modern urban legend, a modern morality play, sort of, and a way to create the most sensational other that you can, so that your sort of opinions, your actions, your desires are valid through having an enemy like that. But
Yeah, whereas
we want to understand, even if it's terrible to do.
yeah, or as Sam Kestenbaum pointed out, they may really kind of be a modern, really mythology.
Yes.
And, you know, so there's this sense in which people are creating these alternate stories themselves that are now having kind of a different life because of how information can spread on the internet, right? So how do we create other stories that maybe help bring us together instead of pitting us against one another?
I think there's actually a lot of examples already. Like if you look at things like Warm Bodies, you know, if you look at sort of, and somebody was mentioning that like Tucker and Dale versus Evil or whatever, there's these stories that are taking these conventions and turning them on their heads and sort of showing that the people who we've thought of as monsters are often not, right? And so I think there are already some decent examples out there of ways people are doing this.
Certainly something like Get Out, you know, which just completely refigures our relationship to uncanny beings and what it means to die and to be resurrected in a certain way, and the racial overtones of that movie. We're getting more and more filmmakers, whether because they're from a different place or they live in a different body or they're just of a new generation, who are really rethinking the assumptions, the heteronormativity, the patriarchy, and the assumptions about who the monsters are.
This is nothing new, though. I just have to point that out, that like historically, this is what horror and monsters have always done. Like, yes, we have new technologies that maybe make those stories and those themes easier to tell. But I mean, probably one of the most famous and obvious would be Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. That whole book is about the creature not being the monster. And that's just one example over thousands and thousands of years of history.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great point, Emily. So when it comes to, you know, creating our own stories and bringing our sort of, you know, new narratives and new creative ways of approaching sharing information with each other, Baba Brinkman is a leader in this sort of new way of communicating. And yeah, Baba, we are all not worthy. I think I speak for us all. Your raps are blowing all of our minds, and they have been for the whole meeting. So
I've cornered DeMarco on rapping about zombified parasites.
I have a feeling
it's hard work.
I have a feeling you might have some thoughts as somebody with a background in literature who is thinking about zombification and storytelling. How do you think we can, you know, take these new ways of communicating and fully engaging and use that to fight the zombie apocalypse or deal with the zombie apocalypse better?
Well, I think literature has played a historical role in expanding theory of mind capacities and allowing us to put ourselves in the shoes of the other. It can be used as a propaganda tool to reinforce a worldview that perpetuates oppression, but it can also be, and I think, like on balance, it has been a civilizing, cosmopolitanizing, helpful force in letting people experience the world through the shoes of people that they have not had the same background as. So I'm kind of with Dr. Scott in like feeling inspired by the imaginative worlds that will be opened up by more digital storytelling platforms and the democratization of that. I'm a little bit less dystopian and paranoid about the costs, although I recognize them. And you know, I like the role that I can play with the rap narratives, but I feel like even what I'm doing at this conference, these techniques are like 30 to 40 years old. You know what I mean? Like there's no new technology here. I'm just playing a beat and saying words, and the only new technology is the fact that I can send it to you via the internet rather than having to have a crowd right in front of me. But the possibilities of integrating digital storytelling, new platforms, virtual reality, stuff like that. Like I've been reading about rappers doing concerts in Fortnite and them being the biggest concerts that have ever existed because of the number of people watching in real time. And you know, I don't play Fortnite, but I would do a concert in it.
That's awesome.
So I
So
think it can,
we're gonna-
it can expand empathy. That was the point I started with, and I think it will continue to do so. And we should be aware of the cost, but we should celebrate that potential of it and keep it going.
Can I jump back real quick and just one last example that I think is a really interesting one when we're talking about how examples of things that are pushing media forward. Going back to sort of what Carla was saying about like Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons, what they're actually doing for the new edition of Dungeons and Dragons is they're completely removing the powers. There used to be different races, orcs and things like that would have different powers, and they're completely removing powers from the race. So if you want your elf to be really strong, you can have a really strong elf. You can have, a orc that's really good at magic. And this is kind of interesting when we think about sort of the differences between vampires and zombies and the way they're traditionally represented. There may be ways to sort of switch that up and going forward and remove the attributes from the physical attributes.
All intersectional monstrous identities are welcome, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
It's interesting how you see sort of theories
So we're
of
going
human nature
to
playing out in the media context like that, right? I don't know if everybody's familiar with the film Zootopia, but I've watched it like a dozen times with my kids in the past few years, and I keep discovering more wisdom in that film because it's like all of the species of mammals have to get together in the city, and they're all pushing back against the stereotypes of what a fox is supposed to be like and a rabbit is supposed to be like. But come on, the sloths are slow, you know what I mean? and you know the sheep are kind of jumpy when predators are around or whatever. So there is a kind of like acknowledgement of the existence of instincts, while there's also this constant like value proposition of we need to overcome them and get along. I just love the tension that's going on there.
Yeah, so we're going to go into the mode now of inviting our audience to participate even more. You guys have been just doing amazing in the comments, but what we want to know now is what were the things from the meeting that struck you most? What's a fact that you learned or something that blew your mind? So go ahead and pop those in the comments right now, and we're going to have a really exciting final wrap from Baba, where he's going to pull it all together. But we're not going to start until we've got the comments flowing. So please put in what's the thing that you learned. It doesn't have to be today. It could be anytime during the meeting.
Or
anything that
monster.
you learned that blew your mind. You could also put in your favorite monster. You can put in one word. You don't have to even write a whole phrase. We just want to make sure that we're feeding Baba's brain so that he doesn't have to take it into his own hands to pursue those brains. So
my brain is empty.
All right.
Should I go for it?
How
and
about
see
you,
what
Baba?
pops up,
For you,
or-
what were the highlights?
Well,
Let's chat a little bit. Tell us what you think.
Sure. Well, I'm an interdisciplinarian, And this may be the best conference I've been to for interdisciplinary. I was so impressed by what a range we had, where you'd have a evolutionary biologist, and up next is a literary scholar or somebody that does new media, or a philosophical ethicist, or just it's hard sometimes bringing all of these disciplines together feels contorted and like unnatural. But in this conference, it really the theme did so well at unifying the perspectives, and there was a real dialogue happening between the various perspectives of generally on average siloed academic faculties. So I feel like it's a real accomplishment, and it's something that other conferences should strive to replicate if they can find a hook as good as yours.
Thanks, Baba. You ready to get started with our wrap up? Or I guess technically in improv.
Look at that. I'm pixelating. Yeah. When it comes to monsters, I'm the Frankenstein kind. Yeah. I was invented in a lab. What's going on? You guys hearing that beat? Oh, there we go.
We're hearing it.
Check it out. I'm the Frankenstein kind. I was invented in a lab to be the best with rhymes. I was forged in those orc fires. I am demonstrating those real vampires that drink blood. Yeah, I'm straight repping it, except I do not have a taste for freaking O-negative swamp monster style. It kind of tastes like feces. I'm just inspired by the origin of species deep in the south. Yeah, where they barbecue brains. That is not hard to do. Yeah, I'm talking about lots of different allegories. People just need to recognize the power of stories, the essential part of us. They're deep in our brains and our circuits. Yeah, so stuff is not our fault, because we're zombies that are perpetuated by satanic cults that eat children. If you play the records backwards, it especially works on all those old 80s rappers. Run DMC when they're kicking a little rhyme. You can follow their trail of snail slime. That's the D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. Rah, rah, like a dungeon dragon. I'm just boasting and bragging when I'm busting a rhyme, when I'm kicking a mirage, the remix by Nicki Minaj. Yeah, indeed, grayscale your phone. It will not stop you from being infiltrated in the dome. You need that instant feedback. Yeah, I can feel that urge in my belly to just get into the words of Mary Shelley, who just wrote that as a freaking teenager. How was that possible? I was obsessed by pagers and status and rapping in lots of different types of styles. I was like, oh my god, I just want to be 8 Mile. I could straight rock it. I just need antibiotics. What is the topic? I will flip it and make it awesome. I need that, honey, because it is an antiseptic. Yeah, feel that hysteria. I'm getting it. What is the euphemet? I've never even heard of it, but I will take every concept and straight up murder it like a zombie on a spree. Shout to Neil Smith. I've got the lyrics and I'm hoping you feel it with the graphic designs. When I'm rapping my rhymes, I'm a mad thriller. In the background is a wasp egg incubating caterpillar. That's right behind me. Where's the keto zombies? They will not be moving to my bomb beats. Why? Cause I got flows. I eat avocados. Why? Cause they're high in oil. Algorithms are brainwashing us right now. I feel that toil. Where's the algorithm? Facebook wrote it, and that's something that I could probably be quoted as saying it zombified me. My ID is something that wants to find lots of diversity. Indeed, find that unity with the community. Everybody that is into zombies musically, get entrained in the brain with this sound. I am telling you right now, we can cope and get around with the trauma, the hot stuff, if we just get deep and tap into emotions and listen to rockin' MCZZ. I could make that just go like I used to play Dungeons and Dragons in my basement though, with little pieces plus a story master. But then I was like, one day I'll be a story rapper. That'll be beautiful. I'll be unforgiven, undead, and chase after the smell of the living. Feel that smell, taste it when it wafts. I am just rocking it with ill hip hop as I'm dropping just DJing myself. I am saying it right now, not just for my health. No, indeed, I'm just busting different rhymes as I'm rocking it. Hungry with my fingers, eating them, the awesomeness. I'm loving it. They're barbecued. They're tasting like French onion. Yeah, baby, I've got some. Just people, just move to this beat. It's so easy, you can get entrained with it. I'm one of those MC freaks that just wants to rock with the zombies. They're undead in the brain, undead in the brain. I am insane in the membrane still. Popping a pill like Sarah Hill and Cypress Hill. See, all the connections are all coming together. Yeah, I'm looking for where all the bodies are buried, and not just in the Trump administration with Steve and Larry up in their basement, running from the apocalypse. Hopefully not dead yet while I'm rocking this. Yeah, indeed. What is even possible? We gotta find out now. Well, before we're stopping this movement of lots of different media styles, I'm just trying to rock it right now. This is a freestyle. Yeah, I gotta give a shout out to Erica, even though I'm from Canada and not America. O'Neal, that was kind of dope, as my flows feel kind of like something in your brain that is so surreal, like all these monster styles that we're giving you. This is the horror movie in your living room.
Baba.
Yes.
Yes, while you were rapping, we got a video. We got a video from Steve Schlotzman.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
We got a video.
I don't know if I should show it though.
Yes.
Should we show?
Of
feel
course,
like I just
show it.
evoked
We gotta
them in the
know. We
rap.
gotta know what's going on with them.
All right, here we go.
Okay. So, balance is funny. Hard to stand. So here's... I haven't heard from Larry in a while. I kind of think he hasn't heard from anybody. I don't feel good. It's really, really hot. Seems awfully hot for October. So this is where I think I'm gonna spend the rest of this video. I'm going to go into the attic because I think it's probably safer in here. Holding the phone. Okay. Back. This is nasty. So, I always wanted to be in a horror film. I always thought I'd be, well, like the hero. And Fessenden, fucking Fessenden, man, he always dies. He dies in the first 4 minutes. Not me. I made it past Fessenden, haven't heard from him. That's disgusting. I wonder, do I have a family? I do have a family. So Fessenden, he makes it only in the first minute, but I forget. I remember, this is my horror film, and I outlasted Fessenden. I don't think this is a film. It doesn't feel like a film. If this were a film, there'd be a green room. There'd be a place with M&Ms and peanuts and gluten-free beer. Fucking gluten-free. You'd think as I turned into whatever I'm becoming, I could stop being stuck on gluten. It's not so bad in here. It's warmer. And, oh yeah, Fessenden. Well, why did I wear white? Well, Fessenden, he dies 30 seconds in, 2 minutes in, 4 minutes in. I just have to make it to the 4-minute mark. And you know what? It's not so bad to finally be the star. Goodbye.
What is going on? We lost Steve. We lost Steve. Okay, I can see this. I can see zombies everywhere. The whole zombie apocalypse team is. Oh my God. Okay, let me tell you guys what I can see. I think I still got the broadcast going. I mean, I think it is. Oh my God, Steve just got eaten by Chelsey Weber-Smith. Huh. I mean, her brain is rotten. She's got Mo Lotman and David Quantum in one hand each. It's like she's impaling. Okay, but then now there's this. I see Clint Kalin. He's coming. Oh my God, what's he gonna do? Clint Kalin just sunk his teeth into the face of Dr. Drew. Oh shit. Okay, wait. I see Peter Schlossman out the window. He's doing freaking awesome. He's jumping over zombies. Diego Guevara Beltran tried to grab him, but then he pushed him aside and he fell. And wait a second. I still see Dr. Drew. He's doing awesome. Wait. I'm freaking surrounded by zombies. Okay, now he's like standing behind people like bring it on. He's getting attacked by the zombie version of Sam Kestenbaum. I'm trying to bring you people the story with my rhymes. Sam Kestenbaum no longer works for the New York Times. Oh, wait a second. He's moving like he's drunk. I can see him being attacked by Lee Kronk and Jacob Patton. He's moving in a pattern. Wait, now 50,000 zombies just attacked him. Oh my God. I thought he would live, but he died at the hands of Greg E. Popovich and Corey Wisner. They're attacking him. Oh my God. I am just the listener and the watcher that's trying to wrap everything I can see out the windows. I'm telling you right now, this is my lyrical info that I'm giving. There's lots of rappers. They're probably all dead. I'm just trying to explain this off of the top of my head. I mean, I see a lot of light stuff and a lot of dark stuff. I see a zombie version of Emily Zarka. Wait a second. I mean, I can see her through the window. She is chewing on someone's face while giving them literary info. Oh my God. It's like bring the clowns in. All the zombies are everywhere. I see Catherine Townsend. She's chewing on the arm of Linda Flores. I swear this is happening right now. It isn't just a story. Yeah, Gwyneth Gordon is walking with zombies all around. Goddamn, she just got eaten by Elizabeth Langland, chewing on some brains. I mean, come on, what is happening? Oh wait, I see the zombie version of Sri Srinivasan. Yeah, I mean what he's doing is absurd. Donna Zuckerberg just tried to run from him, but she got murdered. Christy Roshka just come up kind of cocky trying to run from a bunch of zombies, but then she got killed by Mozilla Kazi. Kone, she's a zombie too. Okay, I'm trying to tell you what's happening right now. What I see in the story. Oh, okay, it's coming through. Zombies, they're everywhere. I mean, they're repping themselves, and one of them is chewing on the arm of Robin Nelson. It is gross. I mean, I'm trying to get to the next chapter, but I can see Von Becker, the disrespecter. He's like a zombie, not trying to be a thriller, but he is now chewing on the foot of Jessica Phillips Silver. That's not a zombie party. Jeanette Vigliotti has been chasing after Carolyn Owens for a long time, probably, and now I see she just grabbed her. She's a killer. Now there's a zombie version coming of Teresa Gildner and Gary Dirks. He's crawling on the streets. He looks very hurt. I can see blood coming from his eyes. His fingers in the dirt. It's coming from his eyes. Wendy Rotterweiss is a zombie, and she just grabbed him and just ripped him into thrice, I mean 3 times, 4 times, drawn and quartered. I am trying to just keep all of this in order. Did I say he was very hurt? I see Josh Kurz. He is a zombie now. He's one of those rockers with ripped shirts. And he's got a lot of bites. He is sinking his teeth into the face of Roger White. I mean, I'm just trying to explain what's happening with this rap that business. I see the zombie version of Athena Actipus. She was just hosting the show. Yeah, you remember it. She is now chewing on the face of Dave Lundberg Kendrick. Oh, they were such good friends before, you could trust. But now I see both of them. They're running from David Buss, except for Athena isn't, because they're all zombies. They're all zombies. How can this happen? Now they're marching their teeth out with Ann Jackson and Katja Cunningham. I see Carlo. He's the running man. Carlo Malley. He's trying to jump down deep into a valley. Over the edge of a hill, except he got grabbed on the hill by Sarah Hill, and she's chewing on him still. Oh my God, I just don't even want to look. Both of them are now getting consumed by Summer, Mango Cook, and Gaiman Bennett. They're all zombies. I can't even understand it. Hell, look, now they're marching kind of evil with Esmagel. They got blood running from their faces. I'm telling you the basics. Wait a second. Who are they? I don't remember them. Oh my God, I see a zombie version of Larry Fessenden. Yeah, he's just biting into something like a tincture. Wait, what is it? It's the jaws of Jessica Brinkworth. He's chewing on a jawbone. I'm just watching from home. Oh my God, that man has got a bite. Wait, is that Roger White? His whole brain looks like it's faulty. It looks like he's chewing on the arm of Danielle Sobolski and Esther B. Florsheim. I can't even believe this is happening. I'm trying to just explain how it's going with my rapping brand. Okay, the zombies are starting to close in. They're coming in. I see the zombie face of Christopher Lynn and Ann Barwich, and oh my God, this is exciting and terrifying. Where I see a zombie version of Diana Fleischman. She's holding Jeffrey Miller in her arms and chewing on his flesh. Oh my God, this is not happening. But wait, yes, I see Peter Todd. He's a zombie. He's holding the heel of oh, wait a second. Oh, I can't tell. Oh my God, it's Erica O'Neill. Oh my God, I'm just telling you about this chapter. I'm the zombie rapper, Joe Alcock. He just got bent backwards by Amanda Gallagher. I don't even remember. Who am I looking at? Is that Vasilis Pozios getting eaten by Eric Bender and Praveen Kampam? God damn. The zombies are just holding all pieces of meat in their hand, and they're eating, and they're eating, and they're still not done. They're eating like this is an episode of Eat, Pray, Love with Rob Dunn, and Sky Riggs Davis is there. I can see her, except she's not a human or a zombie either. She's halfway in between. It's weird. But she's eating Bob Beard, so I guess that means the fact of her being a zombie just appeared. Oh my God, what is happening on this earth? It's all brains. It's Brian. Who is it? Oh yeah, Brian Earp, and he's a zombie too. There is no way of ignoring it. He is chewing on the middle finger of Barbara Madison Horowitz. He's biting. Ow. Yeah, he's like, yeah, tell me something about privilege now. Oh my God, the zombies are attacking. They don't want to settle. Catherine Townsend just got chewed in half by Daniel Nettle. He's up in her guts. She's crying hard. And who's eating on her leg? Oh my God, that's Peter Reinhardt. Yeah. Oh my God, I can't stand it. They can't stand me. They're coming after me. I can see them at the window attacking. Ed Hagen's at the door trying to beat off Michael Calanti. They're coming through. Oh my God, the zombies. They're eating bodies. Wait, is that Amy Body and Johnny Anomaly? They're coming after us. This is not a lecture. I am just the zombie inspector, the rap tester. There's Michael Metzger. He's trying to make it happen. He's running from a zombie. Who is that? It's Jeff Gesson and Stephen Kirsch, and they're coming after him. Okay, now he's getting hurt. I think they're okay. It didn't freaking work. The guy just got dropped. He got stopped, and now he's being chewed on by the zombie Dr. Scott. And oh my God, yeah, those zombies are gonna hurt you. I see Jason Robert getting chased by Francisca Minerva. Yeah, oh my God, yeah. Okay, she's doing her duty. She's eating him. She's like, yeah, you conform to my standards of beauty. Oh, this is not a spectacle that I enjoy. I see Emily Witt getting killed by Ewan Lavoie. I swear to God, this is happening. It is really scary. I see Jim Perry getting killed by the zombie version of Jim Carrey, doing a freaking Joe Biden impression. I am just trying to give you guys the message. There's a zombie that's eating the liver. Wait, is that Liz Grumbach decapitating Coltan Scrivner? Oh my God, this is insane. The zombies are screaming brains. I can't even recognize. Who is that? It's Alana Rain, but she's got blood coming out of her eyes. She does not look okay. It looks like she's eating the brains of W.S. Gray. Okay, the zombies are coming in. I am not feeling all right. I see a window get smashed by the arm of Heather McKnight. I have no more ideas. I just got in it's Dr. Daryl Macias. I mean, I can't even see it. It's coming in through the room. I swear to God, right now, I'm just experiencing my doom. This is happening in every second. I mean, they're just eating. What's happening right now must be the end of this freaking meeting. I'm heading to the basement. There will be no replacement right now. I'm just trying to stay alive. I stay alive and stay rhyming. I'm put in this climate. It's getting hotter. I mean, kind of like the climate. Okay, it's hard to focus. It's not hopeless. I can see right now there's a trapdoor in the floor and it opened. The zombies have overrun the place. Everyone's dead. I am telling you all the stuff that is happening off of my head. Athena Actipus is at the door. Yeah, she's scratching it. She's like, don't leave my conference, bring more of your rapping in. I'm like, no, you're a zombie. I will not trust your insight. I am just trying to narrate everything that I am seeing, right? And I'm going down through the trapdoor. The zombies are everywhere. There are no humans left. And all the ones that were left were really scared as their lives ended, as they got dismembered. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again next November or next October. I am doing my homework about zombies because hopefully the human race is not over. I am digging a hole under this trapdoor. I am hopefully buying some time as I continue to rap more. I hear the zombies above me scratching. I'm trying to make it happen. One of them is like, we want to eat you, stop rapping. But it's not gonna happen. Oh yeah, I remembered. I knew a trick that I could use against Dave Lundberg Kendrick. Yeah, see, check it out. This is my straight rapping. I shave off his hair and he loses his strength like Samson. Yeah, that is gonna happen. That is beautiful. Okay, trying to fight off all of these zombies is unusual. I mean, come on. Maybe the human race is gonna come back. What is that? It is the zombie version of Liz Grumback. Oh my God. She's trying to follow me down the tunnel, but it's getting tighter and tighter, just like a funnel. I see the outside. There's light at the end of it. There might be another humanity. I can remember it. And I come out. Oh yeah. I mean, I come out like the screen of a computer into a new civilization, some kind of dystopian future. The last survivors, yeah, the zombies all around us, but in this small utopia that we created, they haven't found us. It is something where we can recreate all of civilization and maybe make more equality and reconceptualize the basics. It's gonna be nice, yeah. I mean, it's never gonna be denseness as long as we keep the zombies out with these fences and never make friends with them. But there's an internal faction that is trying to say the zombies should be integrated and we can make it happen. I'm like, no, you gotta build the fences higher. Build that wall before the last humans expire. But oh my God, yeah, these are freestyles off my dome. We are sealing it off now. It is the last human biodome, like it's on Mars, except for it's not on the stars. It's just a lot of zombies all around trying to bite us hard. I can see them on the glass. They're climbing it. It's starting to crack. I mean, freaking someone next to me just had a heart attack. I don't recognize any people in this whole community. I mean, the zombie conference had a hell of a lot of unity, but every one of them are now undead, are now walking like a bunch of monsters, and they're all like, zombiehood is awesome. Yeah, see, they all were already empathizing, so the fact that they love being zombies is not really surprising. Oh, they're trying to come together. They're trying to just unify it. They're trying to unify all of the academic compliance, so there's no more silos, there's no more separation, and everyone has to learn the same intellectual basics and then use them as some kind of rubric. It could be about rap music, it could be about evolution or social justice solutions. It is all just part of one foaming mass that we can come together and try to battle this, but there's still room for analysis and criticism and critical thinking. This is Baba Brinkman, seeing the zombies attack this biodome and be delinquent, but I still think there's hope. Yeah, I think we could tussle, maybe dig down from this one into another tunnel. Yeah, that could happen. That could happen. What you're listening to is a narrative setup for infinite rapping. Why? Because I do not want to leave this frickin' conference, and as soon as I stop rapping, they're gonna turn this feed off quick. So I swear I could just keep bringing the lyrics in here. How do you guys feel? Should I just keep rapping for the entire year, and then by the time I'm finished rapping by next year, then the whole next details of the next conference will appear? I think that would be a beautiful thing. Don't ask how. I swear it could be organized by Miss Christina Bacchio. Yeah, see, I mean, she's the organizing master. Me, I'm just the improvising, quick rhyming rapper. So I gotta give a shout out to everyone who was up in here. These zombies are still all around me. This world is fucking weird, but we brought a lot of brains together. It was like the nativity, except the intellectual version with with all the creativity. It happened because we made it happen. I brought the rapping. Lots of different type of people brought other academic factions. Yeah, that's how I gotta end it with this rap business. I gotta give a shout out to Dave, though, and Athena Actippus and Joe Alcock that made this conference all hot. I swear to God, it's about to end. In a couple of minutes, I'll stop. But now I feel my life starting to fade out. The dome is crashing. The zombies are coming in. There's gonna be no more rapping. Pretty soon, I'm in the last bunker, up in the center of it. I hope all the zombie conference was good for y'all and y'all just loved it, cause I kinda loved it. This life was worth living, even if any of the academic infractions I committed are unforgiven. Unforgiven, not living, just dead. I did my best to kick all the zombie raps off the top of my head, but the conference is fading. The last light is going out. The last lights in the skylights are blowing out, and no one doubt the zombies are taking over. They're just like a tidal wave. There is no chance of humanity surviving today. No, humanity's gonna be extinguished with the end of Baba Brinkman. At least you don't have to wonder what the fuck is he thinking. He's thinking everything that he's saying up in this infinite rap as the human civilizations begin to collapse and fall apart. And now I see the last glimmer of light is dark, and all that's left is the sound of my own beating heart and the sound of growling zombies as they all surround me. Yeah, but somehow that sound is kind of grounding. I can feel their saliva dripping on me tonight, and I have nothing left to say with the last bite. Good night.
And if the whole world says that we're crazy, we don't need nobody anyhow. But if you don't wanna fall in love, you better tell me right now. And if the whole world says that we're crazy, we can burn this motherfucker down. But if you don't wanna fall in love, you better tell me right now. You better tell me right now. 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 You better tell me right
I'm sorry to report that ZAM 2020, the groundbreaking and innovative communication platform, has experienced technical difficulties. Unsurprisingly, it once again falls to the British branch of the ZAM organisation to hold the fort, and urge all of you at home to stay calm, carry on about your business as normal, and whatever you do, don't panic. Don't adjust your set. Don't go and make a cup of tea. Don't check your phone for messages on that WhatsApp group you've been meaning to leave. Don't go outside. Don't stay indoors. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't be lazy. Don't stalk people on the internet. Don't judge me. Don't be too busy. Don't be too early. Don't tell me what to do. Don't think your cat cares about you. Don't be late. Don't try too hard. Don't stare directly at the sun. Don't leave the freezer door open overnight. Don't be too needy. Don't be over-attentive. Don't you forget about me. Don't pretend to be someone else. Don't stand so close to me. Don't touch that. Don't watch that Friends box set again. Don't leave your shoes there. Don't forget to floss. Don't fear the Reaper. Don't cut it so short. Don't try so hard. Don't forget to renew that subscription. Don't look at me like that. Don't forget to check out. Don't stop me now. Don't you ever say that again. Don't you want me, baby? Don't be so rough. Don't forget to check the oil. Don't wear purple. Don't go breaking my heart. Don't let it grow too long. Don't forget to back it up overnight. Don't push me, 'cause I'm close to the edge. Don't eat that, it's disgusting. Don't walk away from me when I'm talking to you. Don't, under any circumstances, listen to rap music.